Hello, Mr. Silias. This is Elma from UNTV speaking. How are you?
Can you hear me? Does it sound good?
Yes, I don't see the picture. Your camera seems to be on, but I see black screen. Now I see your portrait picture.
We'll try to connect right as soon as we can. Let me just see.
Now your camera is off. Now it's on, but it was black.
Yeah, let me just quickly check here. We'll try to make sure. Okay, we're just reconnecting.
Are you going to reconnect again?
Yeah, we're going to reconnect it.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Silias. Perhaps if you can unmute your mic. Okay, I can see you there. Okay, would it be possible to tilt your screen or your camera downwards, please?
Elma, we can hear you.
And if it's okay, and if
and
it's
can you
possible,
tell me when you're ready? Thank you. So let's start. Good morning. Welcome to the press briefing of the UN Information Service here in Geneva. Today is Tuesday, 14th of October, and we are going to have quite a few information coming from the situation in Gaza. But before going to Gaza, I have the pleasure to welcome a colleague from UNICEF, Carla Haddad, that I have here on my right, who's UNICEF Director of the Private Fundraising and Partnership Division of UNICEF with Ricardo. Carla has come to tell us about the plight of the Rohingya children in Cox's Bazar, which I understand you have visited recently. Please, you have the floor. Thank you. Yeah, that's right.
Good morning, and thank you for your time. Right now, in the Rohingya refugee camp in Cox's Bazar, it's the largest camp there. A funding crisis is unfolding and is threatening to erase years of progress for the Rohingya children. I was there last week, and it was disheartening to watch classrooms close, services shrink, and the futures of hundreds of thousands of children that are hanging by a thread. So last week, we visited the different parts of the camp. UNICEF, with our partners, we're doing everything possible to really stretch every dollar, but we're running out of options. Education, water, sanitation, and hygiene assistance are among the hardest hit. Protection services for women and children in this very large refugee camp, the largest, are being interrupted just as risks are increasing. Recent data shows a staggering reality for children, with 685 cases of child recruitment by armed groups reported this year alone, more than 5 times the total recorded for all of 2024. And the year is not yet over. Indications are that the situation will be even more dire next year. The overall Rohingya response faces what we call right now in UNICEF a funding cliff in early 2026. So we're progressing towards this funding cliff at high speed, with worst-case projections suggesting that already insufficient contributions could fall by half. Even with efficiencies, integration of programs, localization of the support, and the saving of tens of millions of dollars, no amount of cost-cutting can offset such a deep decline. And across the camps, kindergarten and grade 1 learning facilities remain closed, so children are not schooled, denying education to the youngest of children. Youth vocational centers are shuttering, leaving adolescents vulnerable to recruitment, exploitation, and abuse, and rising insecurity overall. And these are not abstract numbers. They are warnings. A leaner, more efficient response, which we're trying to do, cannot replace the resources needed to sustain life-saving services. I just wanted to share that in the camps, I met 14-year-old Salma, one of 3 girls in a classroom of 18. So majority of boys, only 3 girls remain in this classroom. She told me how proud she was to finally study the Myanmar curriculum, something her parents once thought would never be possible. That progress came only through years of engagement and trust building within the community, but is now at high risk. So we're faced with impossible choices, not only UNICEF, all the partners operating there. We've prioritized reopening classes for adolescents like Salma, both for their education and for their protection. When adolescents have no safe place to go, they face heightened risks, and I heard it from several children, risks of child labor, of course, early marriage for girls, and exploitation. Last week, we were able to reopen classes for younger children, a moment of hope. Yet kindergarten and grade 1, as I said, remain closed, and whether we can sustain existing programs next year is still uncertain. So for children who have already lost their homes, friends, and sense of normalcy, this uncertainty when it comes to schooling is devastating. Very quickly, I wanted to share with you what I talked about with 15-year-old Mohammed. He met me to tell me what had happened when the school had closed. He thought it would never reopen. So he stayed home, took care of his aging parents and of his siblings. And each morning he watches children go to school and says, I feel like my childhood has ended. Across the camps, families feel the same despair. Mothers in different centers, UNICEF-supported nutrition centers, speak of reduced food assistance, so critical issues around food and food security, shortages of soap and clean water. Childhood diseases are on the rise, and malnutrition too. SAM, or severe acute malnutrition among children, is now at its highest level since the height of the crisis in 2017. So this is not only about an education emergency, it's a child protection and survival crisis for children. It is a test, really, for our collective will. And we're repeating this everywhere across public and private sector. Without predictable, flexible funding, we will see more children out of school and malnourished, more girls forced into early marriage, and more young people losing hope in the future. So we'll stay in the camp, we'll stay and deliver, that's our mantra, but our ability to do cohesive and meaningful work depends entirely on voluntary funding. And I left Bangladesh more convinced than ever that even if the situation there is not on the media headlines, we really owe it to those children to bring their situation to your attention. I thank you.
Absolutely, this is absolutely right. So I thank you very much for this briefing, for telling us about your trip. I see Emma Reuters has a question. Emma, good morning.
Good morning. I was wondering if you could say more about the recruitment into armed groups, actually. Which groups are they? And did you speak to any children about maybe some comrades that they'd lost, why they're tempted, why it's better than the alternative that they're facing in the camp? Thank you.
I won't be able to name the armed groups. There are several armed groups in the region, but I spent time with a family, and they were happy for me to use information from what they've shared, and it was honestly heartbreaking. So there was the mother, the father, and the children. One of their sons was abducted and then returned, and the other two. So they had two sons abducted. And what they talk about is fear walking in the camp at different moments of the day. Because of the funding shortages, we're rationing everything we do in the camps. So it's not a direct correlation, but there is a sense of heightened insecurity. And it could be that the child is walking somewhere, either to school or to fetch for food or get some clean water from the water points, and they get abducted. It could happen during daytime or any time in the evening. And what they were saying is the stress, honestly, you could see the parent talking about the details of the stress of having someone missing. And we know what it does to a family. So not only they're coping with food shortages and other matters, but also having, at different moments, one of their boys abducted. What is interesting is the boy who came back became an activist in the camp, and they're really ramping up the support across the adolescents and youth to sensitize children on improved security awareness, be situation aware when you move around. But this is very disturbing for us. I mean, we're talking several years into this camp of sustained support, and seeing an increase in recruitment is extremely worrying for the future. So we've spoken to several families, and this is the #1 stress that they have right now. And of course, they come to early marriage and wedding their girls, and this is kind of an issue of no option. If the girl is out of school, the immediate consequence is early marriage for economic reasons, and also for protection, even for protection. So we're put in impossible choices, and we're putting these families in front of impossible choices.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions in the room? Or let me see on the platform. John Zarocostas, France 24, and The Lancet.
Good morning. I've got a question for Carla, but on another topic. So I'll wait if there are more questions on Cox's Bazar.
I don't see any, John. So, no, I don't see other questions on Cox's Bazar. So please go ahead before we let Carla go.
Yes. Good morning, Carla. Nice to see you again. I was wondering how you are doing in the fundraising for funds for Gaza, given that some of the areas that UNICEF is actively involved, education, nutrition, and WASH, are very underfunded, below the average.
John, we will have a very consistent part of the briefing on Gaza, but this is a very specific question for us as UNICEF. I don't know if you want to answer before you go, but we will have much more on Gaza, including from UNICEF. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So, I mean, the funding crisis, the global funding cuts are coming from the public sector. And again, it's not just the US, it's the domino effect with the different European countries following suit because of the geopolitical situation and prioritizing other budget lines, so ODA shrinking massively. This is an important piece, and we know that for UNICEF, we're living a contraction of 20% across our programs across the organization. Now, what I can say is, as much as things are shrinking on the public sector side, there is a momentum for the private sector side. And even if we don't go to the private sector saying you have to compensate for the public sector, the private sector has a role to play per se in itself. And we've seen a revived momentum now for Gaza, for Ukraine, for other underfunded and also willfully neglected contexts. I think that we have a momentum now across the humanitarian development sector to really have a meaningful approach with the private sector to at least create that safety net until things stabilize more globally. And Gaza is no exception. And especially now, there will be a renewed attempt to support because they know that all the agencies are ready to deliver the aid. We were kind of handcuffed, and the private sector could not just support to support. So I think we need to really ramp up our appeals and bring the private sector at the table.
And that's really timely that you speak about that, Carla, because our next speaker is indeed going to speak about the reconstruction need for Gaza. I'd like to thank you very, very much for having come. This is a question for her. Not on Gaza, please. I want to do a Gaza part. So is that on Gaza? But I would like to hear from UNDP because he's going to speak a lot more about funding. Carla, do you need to go or can you stay? I can stay. Okay, but that's done. In this case, let's do this. We have online, you can stay on the podium, yeah, sure, and Ricardo too. We have the privilege to have online the special representative of the administrator of UNDP for the Programme of Assistance to the Palestinian People, Yago Sillier, who I would like to welcome. And Yago is going to speak about reconstruction and funding. So, yes, I understand. But Carla is going to stay here. She's nicely waiting. And we will take the question on the economic issue and reconstruction and funding for Gaza just after Yago's intervention. And then we will have Christian Cardon for ICRC, Ricardo, and maybe, I don't know if Tariq also will want to say something on the humanitarian side of the situation in Gaza. So, because Jaco needs to go afterwards. So, if Carla can stay, we will listen from Jaco, and then I'll take the question on the economic issues, reconstruction, and funding, okay? Thank you very much for your patience. So, Jaco, thank you very much for being with us to brief the journalists here in Geneva. As I said, you are the UNDP special representative for the Programme of Assistance to the Palestinian People, and you would like to brief us on the issues related to the reconstruction needs of Gaza and the funding. Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much also for the introduction, and thank you very much, colleagues. I'm speaking to you from Jerusalem, but just to indicate that over the last 2 months, I have traveled to Gaza on 2 occasions already. I was also scheduled to go into Gaza on Sunday. It's unfortunately being postponed, but I will be traveling there tomorrow also to further support our program on the ground. Let me maybe just first of all say that the destruction that you see in Gaza, obviously, as has been mentioned before, is devastating. It is very terrible to see it in person, to see families digging through rubble for their belongings, to see young children who are looking for water and food but should be in school on the streets is just shocking. To see once you travel and are in Gaza. However, in spite of this, the resilience of the people in Gaza is incredible, and also their determination to rebuild the Gaza Strip is really incredible in terms of their willingness and determination. We also, as UNDP, call on the need also for all parties to respect the just declared ceasefire. It's important also for the long-term stability and the recovery in Gaza. Let me maybe just give you a quick indication of the early recovery challenges faced in Gaza. I will just highlight the challenges around debris removal. For instance, if you look at the debris challenges and what needs to be done, it is comparable to building a 12-meter wall around Central Park. And if you fill that with debris, then that is the amount of debris that needs to be moved in Gaza. As UNDP, we've already removed about 81,000 tons. That is about 3,100 truckloads. The majority of the debris removal is at the moment to provide access to humanitarian actors so that they can provide the much needed aid and support to the people in Gaza, but we also help with hospitals and other social services that needs to be cleared of debris. We have reused about 13,200 tons of debris. We use crushing machines so that the debris can be reused for anything from road pavements, but also to providing flooring for some of the shelters being built in Gaza. Just to give you an estimate of the challenges that the reconstruction efforts will cost, the RDNA, which was jointly done by the UN, the European Union, and the World Bank, estimate that about $70 billion will be required for the reconstruction of Gaza. That means that also in the next 3 years, about $20 billion will be required. We also call on much needed access to provide also opportunities to address the reconstruction and early recovery efforts in Gaza. This includes also much needed heavy equipment that needs to help with the restoration and the repair of damages and the reconstruction efforts as well. UNDP has been on the ground from day one. We've continued to work and stay and deliver in Gaza. We are covering both the humanitarian to the early recovery to also the development areas. It's obviously a long road ahead, but we hope that with the support of UN partners and other international and national actors, that the recovery efforts can start as soon as possible. Let me leave it there and back and over to you.
Thank you very much. If I can ask the journalists, please, let's concentrate the questions on this, and then we will have, as I said, humanitarian colleagues speaking about the humanitarian situation. Lots of hands up, and I'll start with Jamie. Associated Press, Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Childers. Thank you for coming back to see us. You just mentioned the RDNA. Could you clarify exactly when that time frame is? I'm looking on the internet as we speak, and I don't see that figure of 70 billion. How recent is that? When was that established? And how quickly can you start drumming up funds for that?
And Jamie, maybe you had also you also had a question for Carla. So before your hand. Oh, okay, then wait. Okay. No, let's keep it to that. Jacob, please.
Yeah, so just to mention, the interim RDNA was done in March, and that figure was 53 billion. Since then, the World Bank has done an updated assessment that has brought the figure to 70 billion. And that is what also the most recent pledge would be. Just to indicate actually that the United Nations, with the technical support of UNDP and the European Union and the World Bank, is also now updating the RDNA with the physical damage, which is what will be needed. So also to provide a more comprehensive recovery plan and framework for the challenges in Gaza.
Thank you very much, Emma. Reuters.
Yes, I was just wondering, can you say how many million tons there are of rubble in Gaza right now? And does that include Gaza City? There's been a lot of recent demolitions. Can you say how much extra rubble that has generated? And next steps for pledging, for getting donors and states on board? Thank you.
Yeah, so the estimated damage and rubble throughout the whole of Gaza is in the region of 55 million tons. Another way to put it, apart from the example from Central Park that I mentioned, is also equal to 13 pyramids in Giza. That is the mountain size of the challenge that needs to be filled. Obviously, a big part of that is now in Gaza City. There has been incredible destruction and many houses have been destroyed. There is about 425 housing units that have been either fully destroyed or damaged. So that also gives you an indication of the size and the challenge that needs to occur as well. There are also a number of new, as we mentioned, in terms of the funding requests. It is great to see, as was mentioned previously by my UNICEF colleagues, donors also stepping up and making a commitment to also help both with the humanitarian but also the early recovery efforts in Gaza.
Agnès Pedrero, AFP.
Yes, thank you. Agnès Pedrero from Agence France Presse in Geneva. A question on the work that you will be doing with the rebels. Do you expect to find bodies in those rebels, and what is the procedure in those cases? Who is in charge of taking care of the bodies and to identify them? If you could give some indications about all that part of the work. Thank you. Or other agencies.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, this is a reality and a very sad situation of the work that we're doing also in rubble removal. We have actually come across such incidents already where 3 bodies were found in the process of removing some of the rubble. The UN and the debris removal cluster has very strict, also based on international standard policies and procedures and SOPs for how to deal with such incidents. I can maybe share with you that, what we first did is calling the Civil Defense Unit just to mark off the area. Then the ICRC are called in to help with identification of the remains, as well as WHO of how to take care of those remains. And then obviously there are also religious considerations that we have to do for these types of bodies and for burial. So those are also taken into consideration and addressed during this very difficult period. Unfortunately, we anticipate that many more bodies will be discovered in this process of rubble removal.
Indeed. And we will hear also from ICRC later on. Agnes, you have a follow-up?
Yes, you mentioned that you already have found 3 bodies. Could you let us know since when? When do you have begun your work? Thank you.
Yeah, we started actually with rubble removal already in 2012 in Gaza, but we have been active since the war started on the 7th of October, since January 2025. We have done the rubble removal. The bodies were discovered actually in a mosque about 2 months ago. So that's where they were discovered during the initial phases of providing spaces and open spaces also for shelter opportunities.
Christian Ulrich, German news agent.
Good morning. Thank you. Can you tell us a bit about your discussions with the Israeli authorities? Do you have the go-ahead to go in? Do you have the go-ahead to bring heavy equipment? When do you expect this work to start? And on the money side, do you have any commitments, firm commitments towards this sum of $70 billion yet?
Yeah, so we're in constant negotiations and discussions also under the umbrella of the UN, together with all of our UN agencies, funds and programs to allow access for not only the emergency humanitarian supplies, but also for equipment, including shelter materials that are obviously needed at the moment, especially as we get closer to the winter and the conditions that people in Gaza will also face. We hope that the ceasefire would also provide the opportunity to accelerate also access for other equipment, as you mentioned, heavy equipment like bulldozers and other trucks are needed, and we hope that the access can also be provided for that as soon as possible. On the funding situation, the recovery will be a long process. There are very good indications from donors already, including what we're seeing throughout, the Arab world, but also from European partners. America has also indicated that they are going to be coming and supporting some of the early recovery efforts. What we've learned from these very comprehensive processes is that it unfortunately takes a lot of time, and it will in Gaza also take some time for the reconstruction or recovery to be fully completed. It's usually a combination from donor funding, but also bringing in the private sector to help with the recovery effort and providing funding for recovery, typically in big or after big conflicts. The private sector can generate about 50% of the funding opportunities for recovery efforts as well. And then there will continue to be innovative other ways also found for the funding challenges that will arise into the future.
Thank you very much. Jeremy Lange, Radio France Internationale.
2 questions on figures also. I think I've seen that 80% of the buildings in Gaza have been whether destroyed or damaged, but I think the figure dates back to September 2024. So I'd like to know if you have a more recent figures. Is it still 80%? Is it 99% buildings destroyed? Do you have a more recent figures? And also something I think you mentioned, the challenge of remnants of war within the rubbles. How easy, that's not the exact word, but how confident are you to get the adequate equipment to get rid of those remnants of war? And would that be an issue maybe for the Israeli authorities if they consider the material to be dual use, for instance?
Yeah, first of all, on the destructions, those figures have actually gone up. It is now in the region of 84%. In certain parts of Gaza, like in Gaza City, it's even up to 92% of the destruction. So there are various degrees, but this is also what we are currently doing under our rapid damage needs assessment. We will do physical verifications of the damages and also make sure that both the social infrastructure but housing infrastructure is also recorded and properly recorded so that both the needs and damages can be estimated for the rebuilding efforts as well. As you correctly mentioned, one of the biggest challenges is also unexploded ordnances and how to deal with them. We have an UNMAS team that are on the ground working together with UNOPS on identifying remnants of war and how to also then properly mark them and make sure that they are dealt with. In the debris removal, we have three phases, which varies from very slight opportunities where there might be remnants of war or unexploded ordnances to those that are high risk. And at the moment, we are mostly dealing with situations that are focusing on the least dangerous. So we're cleaning roads and immediate areas such as I mentioned, hospitals as well. There is an effort underway to scale up the teams and the work being done on unexploded ordnances, including various organizations that have been identified to come in. And we hope that they can also be provided access because that's something that is always the first phase of any reconstruction efforts, but also the efforts to remove debris.
Thank you very much. Jaco, I know that then you will have to leave. We have still quite a few questions, if you don't mind. It's okay? Okay.
That's fine.
I'll keep with the room. I'll keep up with the room. So Emma and then our new colleague I introduce, please.
Thank you. It's just a quick clarification to make sure I didn't mishear. Did you say 35 million tons of rubble? I'm just a bit confused because a year ago it was higher than that. Could you just clarify and explain? Thank you.
It's actually 55 million, 55. That is the amount of debris that is expected at the moment. But that number, again, as we mentioned, is also increasing, and has increased.
Merci.
Yeah. Yeah, Alexandre Grosbois, AFP in Geneva. Given the assessments you've been able to make so far, are you in position to give an estimate on how long it's going to take to rebuild Gaza?
It's a very difficult, estimate to make. And I think one will have to start with prioritizing what would be the immediate needs. So part of the assessment that we're doing together, as I mentioned, with the World Bank and the European Union, is also not to identify only what has been destroyed, but also to make sure we prioritize what are the areas that first need to be restored and focused on. Not all the areas might be restored. For instance, you might decide not to restore all the hospitals, but focus on the most important, or for schools, or for large apartment buildings. So prioritizing what comes first and when is a realistic timeline for that will be kind of part of the damage assessment that we are doing as well. But the estimate for rebuilding is quite considerable. It will also depend on the funding and support and opportunities to access and bring in reconstruction material, which will affect the timeline as well.
Thank you very much. Let me now go to the platform. I see Isabel Sacco, Spanish News Agency.
Yes, good morning. I would like to know how the funds, once they are in place, how these funds will be allocated to, I suppose, to private companies, for the reconstruction of Gaza. So what is the plan, the business plan in that sense, to be sure that the finance, the money will be well used? Thank you.
Yeah, so working on bringing private sector back to life is going to be one of the most important areas. It's estimated that 88% of the private sector infrastructure has either been totally destroyed or partially destroyed. 66% has been totally destroyed, and 22% have been partially destroyed. What we do in terms of, revitalizing the private sector are various things together with other agencies and funds and programs as well. For instance, WFP is working on restoring the bakeries, which is much needed for providing bread for the immediate humanitarian needs as well. We are also providing grant funding and microcredit loans to private sector companies, and also then working on young entrepreneurs to start new businesses. There are many young people without jobs. The majority of people are obviously without jobs in Gaza. So starting the private sector, but also creating opportunities for them. This also includes buying certain assets or equipment that the private sector would need to start off their businesses, and then also providing some initial capital funding. In the long run, one will have to look at loans and other opportunities to make them accessible for small and medium enterprises, to also continue to work and focus on the private sector and entrepreneurship, which is desperately needed to create jobs and income streams for people in Gaza.
Isabel, you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. Yes, sorry, I didn't explain myself well. What I wanted to know is how the funds, who will be the institutions that we will deal with, choosing the international companies that will go into Gaza for the reconstruction. How will be in that area the accountability process? Thank you.
Okay, so, as was mentioned, a number of companies will probably look at private sector investment and would look at starting also the construction efforts in Gaza. We have a very strict due diligence process where companies are checked and they verified that they are within the private sector approved measures. And we have various also lines that we use to make sure that companies are vetted and that those that we work with are fully vetted in terms of compliance. This is both in terms of EU standards and vetting procedures, but also American and specifically for us in the UN procedures for vetting both private sector companies, but also those that are working as contractors for the United Nations.
Thank you very much. Gabriela Sotomayor, Proceso.
Yes, thank you, Alessandra, for taking my questions. My question is, how much money has Israel pledged and how much has the United States pledged for the reconstruction of Gaza? Second question, just to clarify, are the borders fully open? Can journalists enter Gaza? Do you know if we can enter? Thank you.
Yeah, on the amounts, I won't be able to say exactly how much will be coming in. I know that we have had discussions yesterday with the American State Department officials who are looking at various interventions for helping to support the reconstruction efforts in Gaza as well. And then in terms of the opening of the borders, it's obviously a very important part of the agreement and who will get access, including the role of bringing in journalists. I'm not aware that anybody is allowed in at the moment, but we hope that that would also change because a lot of people, organizations and groups will be needed to help support through building efforts in Gaza.
John Zarok, I'm sorry. I'll take John and Nick, and then we will go to the humanitarian. But, John, you had a question. I don't know if it was for Jaco or for Carla.
Yeah. Also for the representative from UNDP. You mentioned earlier, sir, that the revised estimate is 70 billion. when was that done? Was it by the EU, the UN, and the World Bank? You mentioned in the reconstruction you hope 50% of the funds to come from the private sector. Is that 50% of the 70 billion? And thirdly, most immediately, and I see Christian in the audience from ICRC, water and sanitation, there's been a lot of damage in the last few days to sewage in Gaza. How urgent is that, and how much money are you willing to put up front for water and sewage? Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe just to mention, the figure of 70 billion is actually an addendum that the World Bank specifically did based on recent methodology. That figure came out in September. As was mentioned, when the full RDNA was done, that figure was on 53 million. But now, with the ceasefire in place, we are hoping to also do both the rapid damage needs assessment, but also the physical verification of the damages as well. Yes, in terms of the 50%, I think that is the long-term ambition, that also some of the recovery costs, including for the 70 billion, will come from private sector, that they will also contribute in the long run to the rebuilding efforts. That is the only long-term stability and hope for recovery efforts. But I think the immediate needs will have to be covered by donors and by other resources and funds available for the reconstruction effort as well. You're 100% right. Water and sanitation is one of the biggest challenges in Gaza. UNDP is actually, supporting water trucking in Gaza. We have, on a daily basis, provide about water to 300,000 people a day. There are huge sanitation challenges as well. UNDP originally was involved in the building of the Khan Yunis wastewater treatment plant. That has been damaged, but we're looking already to restore that so that sewage treatment can already take place. It is one of the biggest challenges. We're also looking at other options for latrines and sanitation kind of opportunities as well, and how to address that through many of our programs and funds.
Thank you very much. And Christian will maybe tell us more when he comes to the podium. John, is that a follow-up? I'd like to go to Nick and then let Jaco go.
Yeah, it is a follow-up. You mentioned, sir, 20 billion in the first 3 years. That seems to be the same estimate as in February. But do you think you need to revise that figure, given that the needs are much higher now?
Yes, I think one has to be realistic also if there's going to be that amount of funding available for the reconstruction and rebuilding areas. But yes, that figure would have come up. You're right. That is the original amount that was given for the reconstruction efforts as well. But I'm sure that will also have to be revised. Again, it will determine for the first 3 years a lot on funding from various sources, including donors, multilaterals, the IFIs, and other funding sources that will contribute to that.
Thank you very much. Last question, incoming Bruce, the New York Times.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. There's been a lot of discussion about the need to destroy the tunnel networks in Gaza Strip. Is the UN involved in that? And what are the implications of that for the kind of work you want to do on infrastructure recovery and restoration? Thank you.
Yeah, we're not involved in any of those type of operations or projects at the moment. I think that will have to be asked in the longer run. One has to see how to address that and what will be the implications. But at the moment, that is not a focus of the immediate early recovery needs that we're focusing on in Gaza.
Jaco, thank you so very much. Okay, quickly, please.
Well, it's just a clarification. Sir, thank you again. You mentioned $20 billion over 3 years, but $70 billion all told. Can you just, what is the $70 billion period you're talking about, if that's not the $20 billion? And if you could also just say, you also mentioned that there are very good indications from donors already. Can you be specific about that? What specifically are you hearing from the Arab world, from the European partners and Americans at the moment?
Yeah, I think, again, the timeline is dependent on how quickly both funding and other opportunities are available, and access also to bring in the recovery efforts as well. So the timeline is still undetermined in terms of how quickly that will be. I think one are looking probably in the region of a decade or decades, and even longer, for the overall recovery of Gaza to be fully addressed as well. But that is determining on a number of factors as well. In terms of the funding sources, a number of countries have already indicated that they are willing to complement their existing funding for the rebuilding efforts in Gaza, but also address the larger challenges in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem as well. We've heard very positive news from a number of our partners, including European partners, the European Union, Canada, for instance, as well. The Germans have indicated some funding, and as I mentioned yesterday, there were also discussions with the United States in terms of their interest to support the early recovery and humanitarian efforts as well.
Thank you very much. Jakob, I don't know how to thank you really. I know that you're really busy, but we really appreciated that you came to the briefing, and please keep us informed, keep us updated on the reconstruction efforts now in Gaza. And good luck with your very important work. Thank you very much for being with us. And before I let Carla go, Jamie, you had a question for her. I thought there were more, but just ask us so we then can go to the...
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned the renewal, I think, of private sector. Could, without giving advertisements to your private sector about your private sector donors, can you tell us specifically who you're targeting in the private sector? I mean, are these, or could you tell us what sectors they're in? I mean, can you just try to help us hone in a little bit on where the money could be coming from? I mean, this is not coming from UNICEF boxes that are given around at Halloween time in the United States where kids put coins in the box. I mean, it's coming from other places, right?
Yes, thank you for the interest in that. So when we talk about private sector writ large, we call it private sector as a category, but if you dig into it, you have individual giving, Mr. and Mrs. anyone around the world. They give through digital, online. They can do, we call them pledge donors. They give monthly on an average for 8 to 10 years, and this is what we call liquid gold. It's completely unearmarked. And we have 11 million supporters who give like that online. It used to be face-to-face prior to the pandemic. We still have that. And some do give through different local, greeting cards a long time ago, trick or treat in the US. You have different things that happen in a contact. That's one thing, individual givers. Then you have what we call highest value channels. These are the billionaires and the millionaires. So we have a very robust strategy for billionaire giving, and we have a platform called the International Council Platform that weighs approximately 500 million. And these are billionaires who want to give to UNICEF either to specific areas of the work or completely unearmarked. And we push for the most flexible funds possible to maintain the ability to support contacts that are underfunded or forgotten. Then you have the corporates, and it was mentioned earlier, due diligence is extremely important. How we vet the corporate sector, the companies who we partner with. There are due diligence common criteria for all the UN agencies, and then each agency has its own criteria depending on the risk appetite of an agency and the reality and the DNA of the mandate of the agency. And then you have foundations, like, just to give an example of big institutional foundations, Rockefeller, Bill and Melinda Gates, Asian foundations, Gulf foundations. And then you have multi-faith-based and membership organizations across the different religions. So it's really writ large at the mass level, at the general public level, and at the highest value possible channels, corporate foundations and billionaires. This is the categorization.
Thank you very, very much. Carla, thanks so much. And thanks for staying on the podium throughout. Let's keep our... Yeah.
Yes, I had also my initial follow-up.
Right,
yes,
right.
sorry, Carla. Yes, it was about what you mentioned earlier about this momentum you were talking about. Is it something that you have seen, that there is a momentum that companies or private sector is approaching UNICEF now on Gaza, or is it more a wish from your side? And how much the appeal for Gaza is funded? Thank you.
It's both. It's a wish and there is momentum. I think we've never been in a situation where the private sector has been so interested in contributing to some of the global challenges. Now, it's complicated, it's complex work. We need to really find the sweet spot on how we engage, but it's across the board. And some partners will only be interested in those contexts that are not in the media headlines. So, you know, it's a conversation. Maybe just one example on that will make it real for you. Many corporates will want to earmark and channel their funding to a specific area that fits their interests, their policies, where they operate. And we have these negotiations and conversations with them, and more we tell them, can you include in your giving a window that is unearmarked? And we use the argument of equity. You have a role as private sector to also be equitable, not to be for some children somewhere, but to be for all children everywhere, or for all civilians everywhere. And so we have these conversations, and very often we end up succeeding in creating more of a portfolio approach in their giving. It's complex, but now there is momentum. And I think with the global funding cuts, we cannot afford not to engage intentionally with the private sector, but also to challenge them, not just on the income, but on the influence, on how their work can influence negatively child rights, what they do in their supply chains, all the issues around child rights, from child labor, child well-being, all those issues. So there's a conversation that goes beyond the income generation, that is more on the influence the private sector can exert and how we can leverage their own influence to channel more support to contexts like Gaza or others.
Carla, so thank you very, very much for all this briefing. And Ricardo, you come back afterwards. Huh? So now let's go ahead with the humanitarian aspects of the situation in Gaza. First of all, I think I don't need to remind you, but we have sent you 3 statements and readout yesterday from the Secretary General on the hostages, on the ceasefire, and on his conversation with the Israeli Authority. I won't reread them here, but I'd like to point out to them because, of course, the developments that we had in the last hours are extremely important. And one of the actors of this development was, of course, ICRC, and I'm happy to give the floor to Christian Cardon now to tell us a little bit more about what happened and what are the needs now. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you very much, Alessandra. Good morning, all. So I will focus on 3 main issues, maybe a very brief recap of yesterday's release operation, which, by the way, is not over. My second point will be on what's happening today, specifically when it comes to human remains. And then third, maybe briefly on humanitarian aid to come in and back maybe to some questions on what we also see as priority sectors for the massive reconstruction ahead. Okay, so back on yesterday, but briefly, I mean, the first important information, many more families have been reunited yesterday. That was the top ICRC mission and goal, obviously, of the operation of yesterday, and we obviously welcome that development. As you know, ICRC was not involved in the negotiation that happened prior that operation. What happened is that the ICRC is called and requested by the parties, Hamas and the Israeli authorities, to play that role of neutral intermediary. As you know, also, this is a role that we have played since October 2023, but also in several occasions in that specific context, but also in many other war zones before. Yesterday, 20 hostages were handed over to the ICRC and then handed over to the Israeli authorities. And then on the other side, we had 1,809 Palestinian detainees who were handed over to the ICRC, as you've seen, from an Israeli prison, and then back for some of them to Gaza and others to the West Bank, and a little number also to East Jerusalem. Later in the day yesterday also, 4 deceased hostages were handed over to the ICRC in Gaza and then were handed over by the ICRC to the Israeli authorities. That brings us to a number since October 2023 of 172 hostages that have been released and where ICRC was involved in the release operation, and 3,473 Palestinian detainees who've been released, again, since October 2023. No need to remind you that we unfortunately, never had access to both the hostages and the Palestinian detainees, despite having repeatedly asked in bilateral, but also publicly, to get access to the hostages and to the Palestinian detainees. For your information, also, when it comes to Palestinian detainees, ICRC had probably one of its biggest activity in that context was the visits to Palestinian detainees prior the 7th of October 2023. For that very complex operation of yesterday, again, which continued today and probably in the next days and next weeks, we had to deploy additional staff, 23 staff, in addition to 350 staff inside Gaza, including 50 internationals. Part of this expertise that we needed yesterday for the release operation, obviously you have weapon contamination expert, you have detention expert, you have medical expert. You can well imagine that when you welcome hostages and even Palestinian detainees who spend times either in Gaza for the hostages or in places of detention, you need a specific medical attention, and that's the specialized staff that we have deployed for that operation. I also want to share with you that when it comes to the Palestinian detainees, the ICRC, despite not having been able to access them over the last 2 years, was able to do what we call a pre-release interview with each and every one of them who were released yesterday, including in the presence of our medical expert. That was very important to do that prior their release, and that's the way we work there and in any other context. So that's yesterday. By the way, if we compare to previous operations that you have followed in the last 2 years, we also very much welcome the fact that compared to previous operation, these ones were much more discreet. We didn't have the ceremony, and this is clearly something that ICRC has been extremely clear about, being with Hamas or the Israeli authorities, that respect of the dignity of hostages, Palestinian detainees, and obviously, and I will get back to that, human remains should be ensured all the way. Okay, today, very soon you'll have in your inbox another ICRC press release specifying a bit what we will be doing in the next hours, but probably days and weeks. The research for human remains, it's obviously even bigger challenge than having, I would say, the people alive being released. That's a massive challenge. As you know, there will be human remains being handed over from both sides, the Israeli authorities, but also Hamas. Already today, and we started yesterday with the 4 deceased hostages that were handed over, we will play a role also in facilitating this very sensitive operation. We've called once again, and in particular when it comes to the human remains, for dignified management of the bodies. And this means also that we need our forensic experts all along during this very sensitive operation. We will also be providing, whenever needed, very concrete materials, body bags, but also refrigerated vehicles, making sure that, again, the dignity of the human remains can be respected, and also, obviously, the identification of these people to make sure that as soon as possible the families who have been waiting for already too long can have the information about their loved one deceased. This remains also a huge challenge when it comes to weapon contamination in the area. I think that's listening also to colleagues from UNDP before, with the challenge we have in front of us when it comes to the reconstruction, the issue of weapon contamination will be central when starting the cleaning, but also obviously when starting the search for human remains that are still under the rubble, as we all know very, very well. Now, briefly, maybe on humanitarian aid and what we also see as top priority at the moment, I think the first thing to be very clear about is that it's about aid coming to the people and not anymore people going to the aid. Let me just clarify that over the last months, we've all seen how complex it has been for humanitarian actors to do their work. And basically, most of the actors, ICRC included, were not able to organize a sufficient distribution of aid inside Gaza. And what we've seen instead, it's people coming back from distribution sites being wounded, if not killed in many instances. So the first important thing, I would say, beyond the number of trucks and many details that you're probably going to ask me afterwards, that's the shift that needs to happen. It's that the aid should come to people. And when we are talking about humanitarian principles, it's to make sure that actually elderly people, handicapped people, wounded people can have access to the humanitarian aid. That has not been possible over the last weeks and months in Gaza. So we are ready, obviously, as many other actors, with trucks ready to come in. Some already entered, as we've all seen yesterday, with any kind of materials, not only for the short term, but also for the long term. I heard a question about what's the priority in terms of infrastructures. What's very clear and what we have seen, including in Gaza City, and by the way, ICRC just reopened also, is activities or its presence inside Gaza City. You remember that was suspended since the 1st of October. But what we can see is that water infrastructures, wastewater infrastructures, hospitals, electricity infrastructures, most of them collapse or are on the verge of collapsing. So it's very important that in addition to the emergency aid that will be in the trucks, there's also materials to allow the key actors to rebuild these infrastructures. Voilà, I will stop it here. Voilà.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christian. This was really insightful. I will now maybe turn to, who wants to start? WHO.
Thank you. Thank you, Alessandra. So just really a few points on immediate needs for supporting health system in Gaza right now. You have probably seen Dr. Tedros had a post yesterday. We managed to get to Al Ahli Hospital and deploy emergency medical teams there. We also got 8 trucks with the medical supplies for WHO, but also for health partners. We reached European Gaza Hospital to retrieve some equipment and moved it to a Nasser hospital. And we are on the way to get more trucks at the Karem Shalom crossing. Now, what is really needed? I mean, we've been talking to you on all these different parts of a health response in recent months. Well, first we need to scale up the delivery of medical supplies, because the pressure on hospitals is not going to ease overnight. We need really to bring as many supplies as we can right now to make sure that those health workers who are still providing health care have what they need. As I said, we managed to get to Al-Aqsa Hospital, to Al Ahli Hospital, where we deployed some tents, and I will give you all these details in a note. Second thing is really to expand the medical evacuations from Gaza. 15,600 people, including 3,800 children, need to be medically evacuated. And since October 2023, WHO has supported the medical evacuation of 7,800 841 patients, including 5,405 children. What we need more countries to accept patients from Gaza, and we need restoration of all the medical evacuation routes to West Bank, where we had a medical referral pathway, to Jordan, but also to East Jerusalem. So we need all those ways through which patients from Gaza were going before the war to be restored. Just to remind you that before the October 2023, we had between 50 and 100 patients from Gaza getting out of Gaza for medical care on a daily basis. We need to support rehabilitation of hospitals and increase the deployment of emergency medical teams. And this is basically to restore specialized services. When we were talking to you about the hospitals that were still minimally functional, they were just providing minimum care. Many of the specialized services were not available anymore. So we need really to do that. And Dr. Pieperkorn was talking about the prefab facilities to increase the capacity and to have specialized services. Let's not forget mental health. We need to ensure mental health services are integrated into all levels of care, from community to hospital level. Mental health needs have more than doubled, with over 1 million people now requiring urgent support, with available services that are far from what is needed. And I really invite you to read the document on mental health psychological support that has been posted, and it really details the need of people in Gaza who went through horrible trauma and were exposed to conflict and violence, displacement and insecurity, were constantly in fear, and obviously everyone needs support on that. We talked to you about a need for rehabilitation. We issued a report, you will remember, some 10 days ago. Nearly 42,000 people in the Gaza have life-changing physical injuries, and 1 of 4 in these injuries are in children. So, and life-changing injuries account for 1/4 of all reported injuries since October 2023. Over 5,000 people have faced amputation. These people need rehabilitation services, and we need to make sure those rehabilitation services are available. We need to expand screening and treatment of malnutrition. In 2025 alone, over 500 people died from the effects of malnutrition. Right now, only 4 stabilization centers are functioning. We also need to scale up disease surveillance. We've been telling you occasionally about emergence of diseases. You will remember we had a meningitis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, acute respiratory diseases. We need to make sure that we can capture that any possible trends and to respond to it. And again, we need for that access, and we need resumption of medical evacuations, and we need flexible funding. And again, we need this ceasefire to last. So I will stop here, and all these numbers will be sent to you in a note.
Tariq and Christian on the other side. Thank you very much to both. And Ricardo is here also to answer a question on Gaza on behalf of UNICEF. I open the floor to questions now. Jamie?
Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you, Christian, for coming to see us. You mentioned that the more operations are continuing. How many bodies do you expect to be handed over today? And could you just sort of give us a perspective, because it seems like this is a really important point going forward. How difficult is the process of obtaining human remains? What are the challenges, and particularly how concerned are you that any delays might jeopardize the ceasefire? So what are you telling both sides, either to tamp down expectations or encourage patience so that this important element doesn't derail the progress that has been made so far?
Thank you, Jimmy. On the number, I would have had the same answer yesterday when it comes to the living hostages or Palestinian detainees. And believe me, that's a big issue for us. We actually don't know. We know that we have to be ready. We know that it's happening today. It's starting today. It's even more complex to have detailed on that when it's human remains. And I'm now moving into your second questions, because actually what we also understand from the parties that that's the complicated part, and that's the part that might take longer. I think there was a very clear understanding that the first part, so leaving hostages and leaving Palestinian detainees, was supposed to take place in one day, mission accomplished by the parties. But now there is clear indication that this might take much more time because of the difficulty to find the human remains in Gaza in particular. That's the case for the human remains of hostages, but in general, human remains, as we've discussed before, that may be under the rubble, considering the intensity of the conflict over the last days, particularly in Gaza City. Now, are they in Gaza City? Are they in the south of the Gaza Strip? Are they in the middle of the Gaza Strip? These are information that we don't have. Yesterday, what I can tell you is that at some point, we were notified that there would be release in the north, and there would be release in the south. That may be the same scenario for the human remains. That may be also, there might be also other places where ICRC will have to move. But again, that's part of the big challenge our team on the ground are facing, is that this information are coming really in last minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, yeah, that you're sort of alluding to. I mean, what are you telling both sides, either the Israeli side or the you know, the Hamas Gaza Palestinian side? I mean, is there the possibility that this could take weeks, and is there a possibility that some remains may never be returned?
And that's the case again in many war zones. Yes, I think that there is clearly a risk that will take much more time. What are we telling to the parties is that should be their top priorities. And again, not only when it comes to the human remains of hostages, but other human remains. A tendency that we have seen in other conflict zones is that the authorities, the moment there is a ceasefire, will postpone that, or there will be a rush to rebuild and then neglecting the research for human remains. So that's why in a moment where all want to rush, we, ICRC, remind the parties of the importance to respect that specific step. Obviously, again, for the families to be able to be notified as soon as possible. And that's possible. We've seen in certain places that when the concerned authorities are taking the necessary time to do the identification of the bodies, families get their answer more quickly. And it also has a consequence on any initiatives of reconciliation for the future. So the question of the missing people, and in particular the research of human remains, is absolutely key, and again, that's what we've asked to the authorities.
Thank you very much, Emma.
Thanks, Christian. It's on the same topic. So the 4 hostage remains that returned yesterday, did Hamas give you any indication that they know where they might be? Or are they pretty much starting from scratch? What's your impression? And is ICRC involved in that search, or really just the transfer? And to follow up on what you said about aid, has the really big ramp up or scale up of aid that is so badly needed in Gaza, has that really happened yet, or we're still sort of in a waiting pattern? And for Tarek, please, on the medical evacuations, have you been given any indication of how quickly that can begin? And is there any guarantee that transfers back to Israel, which were happening before the war, can resume? Is that part of this agreement at all? Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. No, we are not involved in the search, in the concrete search on the ground of the human remains. Obviously, we are in very close contact with Hamas as we speak. That's what our team are doing. both, by the way, at the political and security military level, and that's also the case, by the way, on the other side. You know, when it comes to what we know or what we should know right now, knowing that will happen in the next hours, I think it's probably the most sensitive operation that we are handling. So obviously these are information that we need to keep extremely confidential until the moment the bodies are handed over to the authorities on the other side. And that's the same thing for the other side. That's the main reason, because from experience we know that that can have jeopardized that process. So you will understand that I cannot go into the details of that one. Now, when it comes to the aid, the answer is no, not yet. The shift has not yet happened. We are still witnessing, you know, only few trucks coming in and large crowds approaching these trucks in a way that is absolutely not conform to humanitarian standards. So figures are talking about the need for 600 trucks per day for 6 weeks to alleviate some of the first needs. I think we are not yet there yet. We are clearly not yet there. Sorry.
Thanks, Emma. Well, we don't know what will happen. Well, we can really hope, and we will do our best to get people as fast as possible. These are really people who have life-changing either injuries or diseases, because we are not talking only about the people with the trauma injuries. And if we look into statistics of people who have been evacuated, let's say, since May 2024, 766 had a trauma injury, but 681 were oncology patients. There were 250 people with ophthalmology issues, congenital anomalies, cardiovascular diseases. So it's a mixture of people who have been injured, but also people who had pre-existing conditions. So we need really, again, to find countries that will accept. And if you look at our fact sheet, you will see the numbers of per country who accepted the most, with Egypt accepting almost 4,000 people, followed by United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Turkey, EU countries, and others. We need countries to be willing to accept patients, but we need those really well-established corridors to Jordan, to Egypt, to East Jerusalem, where people were referred in the past. And you will remember that we were issuing a yearly report on referrals from Gaza to neighboring places. So we will do our best. We just have to understand that we are really talking, I'm giving you numbers. These are really people who need to go out, to receive medical care, to try to have a normal life again. And sooner it happens, better it is.
Ricardo, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just to chime in, I echo what my colleagues just said and reinforce how devastating these last 2 years have been for children across the Strip. And that won't change with a temporary ceasefire. Obviously, that's the very first step that we have been calling for, so we can start rebuilding that humanitarian system that has been basically dismantled or very close to being completely dismantled over the last couple of months. 3,800 babies in need of medical, or children in need of medical evacuation. We know that 25% of all children injured in Gaza have life-debilitating injuries. So that's several thousands of children who need better treatment and are not getting access to it, or even wheelchairs and crutches, and are not being able to get access to those supplies because they have been denied over and over to get in. So we're working on that. But again, this doesn't change in a few days. This will take, as our UNDP colleague said, weeks, months, and maybe decades in terms of the reconstruction, but also making sure that the health systems are back on track, and that the UN can do what it had been doing before this war started and started devastating the lives of children and their families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'll do a little bit of housekeeping here. So we've got 2 questions in the room and 3 online, but Christian needs to leave at 12. So can I ask first those who have questions for Christian? Agnes, I saw your hand up. Simon, is that for him too? Okay, let's start with the 2, and then I go to the platform, and we will see if we can release you quickly. Agnes.
Yes, thank you. So it's a follow-up to what you said, but it's also open the question to Jens, and think it's listening. You say that...
He's in the room, Jens.
Okay. Yes, you mentioned that only a few trucks are coming in. Do you have explanations about why? Is it because the logistic is complicated, or are you doing requirements to enter? It's not possible. And so the same question to the UN OCHA, which has a global view of the situation. If this is for security that trucks are not entering, we would like to understand.
Okay, I'm sorry, bear with me. Come, Jens, but I'll ask Christian to answer first. I'll go to Simon. Let's ask all the questions to Christian, and then the other colleagues will be able to answer. You really have a hard stop, huh?
I can move a bit.
Yeah. Okay, Simon, go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me let Christian answer, and then I'll go to Simon.
Okay, thank you, Agnes. So the answer is that, I mean, there are different factors. Yes, security is one, obviously, but that's mostly when trucks will get inside the Gaza Strip. But before that, there are the entry points. And again, to be updated in the next hours, but to my knowledge, not all entry points are open to have humanitarian aid inside Gaza. And that's the main issue right now. And that's what humanitarians, including the ICRC, have been calling for in the last hours, is making sure that because of the huge needs, all entry points can be open, like it used to be, as you know, in the past, prior October, whether through Kerem Shalom, whether to the north, whether to the south, Rafah, and that's what needs to happen urgently.
Simon?
Yes, Christian, what is your main interlocutor in Gaza? Still the Hamas, or you are speaking with other armed groups in Hamas to collect remains of hostage or other? And the second question, could you confirm that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has stopped its operation in Gaza? You mentioned also that there has to be a shift in the process of bringing aid into Gaza.
On the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, what I can tell you is that until very recently, until few days ago, they were still active on the ground. And I'm knowing that because we were still receiving on daily basis people wounded coming back from the distribution sites. As we speak right now, we've been informed that there might be a shift, knowing that all the other traditional actors will fortunately be able to restart their operation as they used to do prior 7 of October, but to be confirmed if the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation will continue to play a role, you would have to ask them, obviously. Yes, we obviously continue the dialogue, as I said before, with Hamas authorities inside, outside Gaza, by the way, political level, but also security, military level, and any other actors that could have an influence as we speak on the humanitarian situation, on the response, on the access of humanitarians. And yes, within Gaza you have complication, and yes, within Gaza you have other actors, and yes, ICRC is in touch with all actors present on the ground, all armed actors present on the ground.
Gabriela, is your question for Christian?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My question is, according to international humanitarian law, I would like to know if Israel is primarily responsible for the well-being of Palestinians, and especially the children, and reconstruction, but the well-being of them. And maybe for Alessandra, or I don't know who can answer, maybe Christian. Yesterday, at the hostage release ceremony in Israel, one of the speakers mentioned that this was not a genocide. So what do you think about that? Thank you very much.
Okay, I will go into I will answer your first question. Yes, obviously, Israel, as the occupying power, has the obligation to ensure that the population occupied has access to vital infrastructures, has access to food, water, and health. And this is why, again, the ICRC and many other actors called several times on this to be granted as soon as possible, and not only to be granted, but to be substantially increased in the near future.
Gabriela, I think the answer is not for me to comment what other people say. I think the question of genocide, we have debated enough and expressed ourselves on this, and OHCHR did the same. John, do you have a question for Christian, or?
Yes, actually, it's also for Jens and Tariq and Ricardo.
Okay, so
the number of can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I understood. It's for Tariq and Jens. Can you wait a moment, please? Because he has to go.
All four. It's a general question, so all four. Okay. Yeah, since the peace deal came into force, how many requests for aid have been approved by the Israeli authorities? And what are the items that are being rejected primarily? And if Jens could give us an update on the tonnage that has gone in, if not in truck numbers. Thank you.
Okay, maybe I'll ask Jens to answer this afterwards. Let me just go to Laurent, who has a question for Christian, and then we will come back to all these questions about the aid. Laurent.
Yeah, thanks. Two quick ones. First, Christian, you mentioned that the operations yesterday were much more discreet than previous ones. So would you say that there wasn't any even minor incident to report in all the releases that you facilitated yesterday? And then second one, has some of your staff who was constrained to leave Gaza City come back permanently to the office in the northern part of the territory? Thank you.
Thank you. On the first one, yes, indeed, there were no major incidents report. As I mentioned at the very beginning, we can say that 20 hostages as well as 1,809 Palestinian detainees were brought back to their families yesterday evening, all of them. So yeah, there's no I would say incident to be reported, and indeed, and I do confirm that contrary to the previous operation, there were no ceremonies, as you can have also witnessed. I'm not sure I understood the second question, but I guess it's about our presence in Gaza City, which was. Yeah. So the activities have resumed from our Gaza City office, and they were suspended from the 1st of October. So that's obviously an important development, and we are ready to scale up, I would say like any other actors, obviously, as we speak, our response, and also the setup that we have inside Gaza City.
Thank you very much, Christian. You see, promise kept, 5 to 12. And I'll now turn to, thanks very much for coming and briefing the journalists. I'll turn to Jens and Tariq and Ricardo, whoever wants to answer the other questions who were really on the, can you come here? On the humanitarian situation, the aid coming in, etc. Jens, I'll start with you. And yes, you may want to also ask your question to Jens afterwards. Or now? Okay,
no, so the question was already asked, so just need to answer.
Thank you. Good morning. So, John, if I understand your question correctly, I'll try to unpack it a bit. You speak about requests and approvals of convoys inside Gaza. That's your first part. I do not have numbers on that, but I have evidence that we have from our colleagues on the ground who says that humanitarians are now able to move more easily in many areas, so teams are reaching peoples in places that have previously been cut off. So movement restrictions inside Gaza is clearly better now than they have been in the past. And we use that, of course, to pre-position supplies, to deliver as much as we can. It is a very fluid situation. I know it's self-evident to say, but I want to put a number of that on that. Over the weekend, we saw 310,000 individual movements of people, mostly from the south to the north, right? Actually, exclusively from the south to the north, the 310,000. And we had an additional 23,000 movements in other directions. So that gives you a sense of the scale of the amount of people moving and how many they are moving. The other part of the question, if I understand correctly, is about the entry of aid. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just do that immediately? Now, we can't do that. It is, of course, part of the 20-point plan, which the UN was not part of drafting, but we are happy that it's in there, and we want to see it happen as soon as possible. But it hasn't happened yet. We are, of course, determined to scale up. We need this scale up. We won't stop until we get it, but it's out of our hands when exactly it is going to happen. So the term my boss Tom Fletcher used yesterday was, we need some determined patience. Determined patience. So determined to do what we set out to do, and as I say, we won't stop until we've done it, but we need that patience, because when, how, where, how much, who's going to count, and so on and so forth, is not in our hands right now, right? It's not in our hands right now. We have 190,000 metric tons in the region ready to go in. An update from the 170,000 we spoke about recently. So it's now 190,000 metric tons that are in the pipeline, just in the region. Jordan, the West Bank, Egypt, even Cyprus.
Ricardo?
Just to add to what Jens just said, very, very correctly, it seems to me that after the ceasefire was agreed, it's a temporary ceasefire. It's always good to remember. We hope it will hold and become everlasting peace for the region and Palestinians, of course. But the enthusiasm that came from the international community, from people on the ground, that this was the beginning of the end of all the suffering and things would change rapidly, is just not being reflected on the ground day in and day out. We are not getting enough aid in because of all the reasons Jens explained right now, and we are being able to move more freely, indeed, inside Gaza, but the level of destruction again is so huge that it will take at least 600 trucks a day, which is the aim that we have, and we're far from that at the moment. UNICEF also has over 1,700 trucks ready to get in with all sorts of different life-saving supplies that children desperately need, but the process is still not there to reflect that enthusiasm that came after the guns went silent, because the aid is still not getting in enough scale.
Thank you very much. Agnes.
Yes, a follow-up to Jens, and maybe if you want on UNICEF or WHO, on the entry points. How many are actually open? And do you also require, like the Red Cross, that more entry points are open? Thank you.
on Sunday, Kerem Shalom was open, and we actually had a staff there who saw fresh produce going in. She spoke about bananas, potatoes, and other fresh produce, which is something that we've been talking about for a long time. So that was Sunday. Yesterday, we don't have any updates. Yesterday was, as you know, very much focused on the hostage release and keeping pretty much everything else. Hold your horses, everyone. We need this to happen, right? We hope that that will change. You know what we are asking for in terms of crossings that are open. We need all of them open. Those that are not functional for various reasons. Some of them have been partly destroyed. Or it's so destroyed just across the border into Gaza that you need road clearance and so on and so forth. So they may not be immediately operational, but we are calling for them to be repaired so that they can become operational. So that's about as much as I can say.
Okay, I'll take the other two, and then we will close because there is still a couple of speakers. Would you believe it? Patiently waiting. Christian.
Jens, it's also a clarification. Are you saying that you are saying it's not in our hands? That sounds so passive, but I understand correctly that OCHA is knocking on the doors and asking Israel to give the green light. What is the response? Are you not getting a response, or is the response wait and see, or what exactly is happening? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Of course, we're advocating with everyone, and we were there in Sharm el-Sheikh yesterday as well, with 22 heads of state of government, whom we are asking to help us push all buttons you can to get this up and running as soon as possible. So, of course, we're doing that. Of course we're doing that. The proof is in the pudding. I mean, it is when these border crossings are open, and we're talking particularly, of course, about Kerem Shalom, which is historically the big entry point for goods, while Rafah was the entry point for pedestrians going back and forth. It has since changed, as we all know. We would like Rafah to be opened up very much as well. That require, of course, the agreement of Egypt. But still, even if the border crossing is open from Egypt, the stuff going in still needs to be checked, cleared, and screened by the Israelis. There's a lot of things that need to work together. But trust me, believe me, we are not passive. I had my boss in Sharm el-Sheikh working at maximum speed yesterday, trying to work these things out.
How did you say? Determined patience.
Determined patience, right?
Jamie.
Thank you, Jens. I'm looking at your latest daily news update for the last few days. I don't see any numbers of trucks that have in them. Can you be specific about how many, since the ceasefire began, I believe it was on Friday, can you tell us how many trucks, aid trucks have gotten in over the time since then? And specifically yesterday you mentioned hold your horses was the message because of the exchanges yesterday. That's done. Can we let go of the horses now? Because, and are there trucks ready to roll? Are they moving? Are there any foreseen immediately? That's the first question. My second question is just very briefly, you also mentioned about the ease of movement within Gaza and the people, 310,000, which is also mentioned in the statement. Is that because of security primarily, or is it also because there is easier, I mean, what is the reason that all these people are moving to the north? Is it they're returning home? Is it simply that the security situation is much better, so they're able to move? What do you attribute those movements to?
Thanks. Let me just take the first part first. I do not have at the moment consolidated numbers on trucks. On the movements, from the south to the north.
Yeah, why?
I think you should ask the Palestinians themselves why they move. I don't want to speak on their behalf.
Of course. And I had seen another hand, Emma.
Hi, Jens. my understanding is that it's actually closed today for a Jewish holiday, Kerem Shalom. Is that definitely the case? And would you have a comment on that? I mean, this is the moment to scale up, and it's closed for a holiday. And is there any indication that the way that aid will be vetted will change at all? Or will it be the same careful checks and balances by COGAT that we've seen over the past 2 years? Thank you.
Well, on the second part, again, you have to ask for those who require these checks and balances. I don't know if that will change. In terms of holiday, I do not have any comments on that. Of course, we want to see as much aid get in as fast as possible and as often as possible. But we respect profoundly the cultural and religious customs and rules that are in the places where we work, wherever we work.
Thank you very much. Jenny, I've got still 3 people on the line.
I'm sorry, quickly, it's like
please.
A 2-year war, and it's kind of an important moment right now. Jens, could you just, the number I heard over the weekend, I'm trying to find it, but I remember hearing something about 300 trucks that may have gotten in, or 400 over the week. 400 maybe was the number. You say you don't have any consolidated numbers. Is that because you're not involved? Why is it that I'm hearing numbers of trucks, but UN doesn't know about them? Is that GHF? Why is there no, I just don't understand why the UN doesn't have these numbers yet. And can you just try to predict out as to when the next time you're going to have trucks rolling into Gaza?
I think the latter part is easy, because once we get the message from the parties to this peace agreement, which has just started, that the borders will be open, then of course we'll start moving in.
And on the first part of the question,
no, I think my reply will be the same. I do not have consolidated numbers from recent days.
Pretty clear. Okay, let me go to the 3 questions online, and then please, there are other colleagues who want to brief you and are waiting patiently. Gabriela.
Yes, thank you, Alessandra. Well, this question maybe also goes for human rights, but they are not there. So my question to Jens is, do you fear that this is a move of Israel to have the hostages back and then could close again the border for humanitarian aid? Or do you fear that could happen?
We want, I don't even know what to say to that. No, that's speculative.
Exactly. I don't think.
Sorry, yeah. I think, I'm sorry, Gabriela, but I think that's speculative at this point.
I don't think we have to speculate on what might be the reason for one or the other, or what is happening. I think that we have a situation now. The Secretary General has very well described it in his statement. We need this ceasefire to make this ceasefire work. We need to implement it. We need time and access and everything we have been saying until now, Gabriela. And we will work for this. We are working for this. Simon, pardon, I've got, I don't know how to do it. I don't know, lady, to the colleague to WHO, I'm very sorry. If you can wait a little bit more. Sorry. Okay, let me go to the people who have been waiting on the platform. Isabel.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Jens. You said that yesterday and today maybe the movement of supplies that you have inside Gaza is easier. So I would like you to give us an order of idea of what is the volume that you have now in Gaza, for how many people, and what kind of supplies now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You'll have to ask the operational agencies about that, because they are the ones with the actual material aid. OCHA is a coordinating agency. We do not have material aid to distribute.
Sorry, Tariq, what did you say?
I think, from WHO perspective, I gave you what are our priorities, and you will have all these numbers. And we can't speculate what will happen, but we need access to be able to try to do this to support the health system.
You want to add anything?
No, from UNICEF side, we do have a lot of supplies pre-positioned inside Gaza that we have been using for many months, and we hope that we will add even more once the crossings are open. But as far as a consolidated number in terms of supplies, I don't have that right now.
Yeah, Imogen.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate it's quite complicated. Not every crossing is open. It's only very new. But you've all said you're getting some aid in. Things are looking a bit better than they were, say, a week ago. Are you working directly with UNRWA? I'm just not clear what UNRWA's role is here.
Yeah, please.
I mean, I don't have any specific information on that, but we've been saying until now, and I think Juliette has been very clear last time when she came and briefed you, that UNRWA is there, UNRWA continues to work, UNRWA is the backbone of our operations in Gaza. I don't know, Jens, if you have more precise information on that, but I think that is pretty clear. But Imogen, if you want to have more specific information on what they are doing, like now, please ask the question to Juliette. John.
Yes, it's a follow-up to Jamie's question and Imogen's. I was wondering, perhaps, since Jens can't give us consolidated figures, if Tariq or Ricardo can tell us how many supplies went in for their agencies. And secondly, perhaps, Alessandra, we can reach out to Rome and the World Food Programme, since they're the lead for logistics. Maybe they have some numbers on what's going in, especially for food, given there's still a famine in Gaza. Thank you.
Just to answer quickly your the second part of your question, we are discussing. I believe, I expect WFP to be here on Friday to brief you on Gaza. So on the first part of the question.
Yeah, as I said, so on Sunday we had 8 trucks of medical supplies, including insulin, lab supplies, essential medicines, not only for WHO but for health partners as well. This was in the post by Dr. Tedros, and you will have it in my notes.
Thank you, and Gabriela, and I think that's the last question. Gabriela.
Yes, thank you, Alessandra. Thank you for giving me the floor. Well, just to have a time frame, when I mean, is there positive signs, because you are saying that aid is not coming right now like you want. So what is the time frame that you have that you would say, okay, this is rolling? What would you say to that? I mean, according to your experience in other conflicts.
I mean, I don't think we need to go to ask for experience in other conflicts. We've had a ceasefire before in Gaza where we were able to roll in. I think it was actually within minutes of its announcement, because we had the crossings open to do so. We are in the same situation today. We have been, of course, contingency planning for this scenario. That's why we have 190,000 tons of aid in the region. So we are ready to roll when the permissions are there and the conditions on the ground allows us to do so.
Ricardo, you wanted to add some figures?
Yeah, just to add on the number of trucks. So far, this is what we have, and in the last 24 hours, things might have changed, and I don't have the latest, but since the ceasefire was agreed on Friday, UNICEF had 41 trucks carrying winter clothes, tents, tarpaulins, dignity kits, and disability kits that entered Gaza. UNICEF has an additional 1,370 truckloads of life-saving supplies ready for immediate dispatch. with thousands more in the pipeline. So we're planning that in the coming weeks, if access improves and more corridors are open, that more shipments will come, including therapeutic food for children suffering from acute malnutrition. Let's not forget 500,000 people are still in famine situation or conditions. We have vaccines, medical equipment, water purification systems, alongside more winter supplies for children and families.
Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone for this very, really informative briefing and for all the questions. I'll ask now to Tariq to stay on the podium and ask his colleague, Dr. Nirja Chowdhury, Technical Officer for the Neurological, Sensory and Oral Conditions Unit, to come to the podium. Can we have the plate, please? Thank you very much. Thank you, Ricardo. Please.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and thank you very much, Dr. Nirja, for your patience. We have sent to you the press release, also a link to the report. It has been published now. It's a global status on neurology. Some of you have asked for embargoed copy earlier, but now it's being out. So I'll ask Dr. Nirja to tell us more about this really landmark report on neurological disorders and burden of diseases.
Thanks a lot, Tariq. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon now. Just let me start with a simple question. Have any one of you had a severe headache or migraine? Or do you know or have known of anyone who has had epilepsy or stroke or dementia? These are neurological disorders. These are conditions that affect the brain, the spine, and the nerves. Other conditions are also included, such as meningitis, the autism spectrum disorders, nervous system cancers, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, and many more. The surprising fact is that more than 3 billion people, that is a third of the world's population, are affected by these conditions. These are the leading cause of ill health and disability, but at the same time, they're often misunderstood, neglected, underfunded, and overlooked. So what makes neurological disorders specific? First of all, people with these conditions often require lifelong care. It's not only the person with the condition who's affected, but also the family and carers. The carers are most often women who provide informal care at home. And also these conditions are expensive. And that's not only in terms of financial costs, but also in terms of the time and energy they take, and also the emotional toll. People with neurological disorders, especially those living in low and middle income countries, very often don't get the care that they need. There are not enough neurologists. Medicines are not available in many parts of the world, or when available, are expensive. People with neurological disorders, only the care for them is only available in urban centers, and they face stigma. They're often excluded and denied their basic rights. So what has been done so far? Countries unanimously came together in 2022 to endorse the Intersectoral Global Action Plan on Epilepsy and Other Neurological Disorders. This is a 10-year roadmap for us to now take action to change the situation. And now we have the release of the Global Status Report on Neurology. This tells us that where we stand in order to reach the targets of the action plan. So very briefly, some key messages and data that we have in this Global Status Report. Firstly, only half of the countries actually provided data for the report. That means we still need to know more. 1 in 3 countries only have policies for neurological conditions. Only 25% of countries actually include neurological disorders in their universal health coverage benefit packages. Only 20% of countries have functioning intersectoral programs for brain health promotion and the prevention of neurological conditions. And only 25% of countries actually have legislation to protect the rights of people with epilepsy. Now, what's also important to note with these numbers is the disparity that exists. For example, in low-income countries, there are 82 times fewer neurologists as compared to high-income countries. When it comes to carer support and services, high-income countries have 70% of them have these supports for carers, while only 15% of low-income countries have these services available. And if we think about what is done in terms of the research output for neurological disorders, it's almost double that in high-income countries as compared to low-income countries. As you reflect on these numbers, what do we believe needs to happen? We now, in fact, with the Global Status Report, have a wake-up call. Countries need to prioritize brain health and neurological conditions in their policies. People with neurological disorders need to have access to care without financial strain. Carers need to be supported. They're very often neglected. We need to have programs for the promotion of brain health and the prevention of neurological disorders. And most importantly, we need to listen to people with neurological conditions and their families. They know best what needs to be done. Now, WHO has been working hard in this direction. We've been working with regional offices and country offices, with governments, with experts, and with other stakeholders to strengthen health systems in countries, to improve the capacity of health workers to provide care for people with neurological conditions,